I submitted my final exam essay, which was based on a research paper I had actually written 2 years earlier. The plagiarism software flagged me at 98%. The professor reported me. The committee treated me like I was a fraud, and I had to prove I didn't plagiarize myself. What followed was weeks of stress, multiple hearings, and a twist where my old work had been reposted without my consent on a student cheat site. And I'm a 22-year-old college student in my final year at a mid-sized public university. I'm not brilliant, but I've always been a planner. Back in my second year, I wrote a research paper for fun, outside of class, and my professor at the time encouraged me to submit it to a small student-run journal online. It wasn't groundbreaking, but they accepted it as a preprint. My name was right there on the front page, and I remember feeling like I was finally in the game. Fast forward 2 years. I'm a senior in a capstone course that requires a final exam in the form of a research essay. The instructions were: pick a relevant topic, write at least 15 pages with references, and submit through the school's plagiarism detection system. And I thought I had the perfect plan. Why not use my old preprint as the foundation? It was my own work. I could update it with new research, tighten up the arguments, add more current references, and basically turn it into my magnum opus for undergrad. I worked on it for weeks, revised entire sections, and submitted it with confidence. It was easily the best essay I had ever written. 3 days later, I got an email with the subject line, "Possible academic integrity violation." And my stomach dropped. The message said that the plagiarism system had flagged my essay at 98% similarity with a paper already published online. The professor had no choice but to report me. I was to appear before the Academic Integrity Committee for review. Not attached was the report. Every single paragraph of my essay was highlighted in red. Next to it was the source, my own preprint from 2 years ago, and I immediately emailed the professor explaining, "That's my paper, I'm the author." Her reply was short, "I understand, but the policy requires us to refer this to the committee. Please bring any evidence you have." I felt sick. The hearing was a week later. The committee had 3 people, my professor, a faculty rep, and a librarian. They asked me to explain. I told the truth. I had written that paper in sophomore year, published it online, and was now reusing it as a foundation for my capstone essay. The faculty representative looked skeptical. He asked why I hadn't cited my own paper. I said I thought it would be silly to cite myself in a class assignment. That was mistake number 1. Because academically, that's called self-plagiarism. Even though you are the author, if you reuse prior work without proper citation, it counts as an integrity violation. The librarian asked if I could prove authorship. Luckily, I had old drafts in Google Docs with timestamps from 2 years ago. I showed them. I also showed the acceptance email from the student journal with my name. The professor stayed quiet the whole time, just letting the process unfold. The committee ended the meeting, saying they needed to investigate further. In the meantime, my exam grade was frozen. If they ruled against me, I could fail the class, lose my scholarship, and potentially be suspended. For a week, I barely slept. I ate like 2 crackers a day. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. And a week later, another email. "We need to meet again. New evidence has surfaced." And I had no idea what that meant. And at the second hearing, the representative slid a printed page across the table. It wasn't just my old preprint anymore. They had found my entire essay, word for word, posted on a student answer site with ads all around it, under the title, "Guaranteed A+ Research Paper." The post was dated from last year. I had never uploaded it there. The implication was devastating. Not only did the system think I plagiarized, but now it looked like I had stolen an online essay that had already been circulating for months. And I was furious and terrified at the same time. Update 1. The cheat site revelation. The committee stared at me like I was supposed to confess. And I said flat out, I never uploaded my work to that website. I didn't even know it existed until today. The librarian asked how I thought it got there. I honestly had no idea. The faculty representative leaned back and crossed his arms. "It seems convenient that your work shows up there and then you reuse it here." Convenient. That word made me want to scream. And I explained again. I wrote the paper 2 years ago. submitted it to a student journal. That's my only connection. I pulled out my laptop and showed them the journal's archive page with my name, plus my drafts with timestamps. The professor finally spoke. It is true that she has drafts from before the date of the website post. Still, the representative said the burden was on me to prove I had nothing to do with that posting. How do you prove a negative? They dismissed me, said they would deliberate. That night, I went full detective mode. I reverse searched the exact phrases from my paper. I found them copied on not just one site, but 3 different study help platforms, all scraping content from who knows where. On one, my entire essay was free to read, with my title intact. On another, it was chopped into example answers under random usernames. And I messaged the support desk of the biggest site. After 3 canned replies, a human finally wrote back. All submissions are user-generated. If you believe content infringes your copyright, please submit proof. And I filled out their DMCA form, attaching the journal acceptance email from 2 years ago. Meanwhile, I emailed the student journal asking if they had ever partnered with these sites. The editor, a grad student, replied, "We had an incident last year where our archive was scraped by bots. A lot of our papers appeared on those cheat sites without permission. We tried to get them taken down, but it's like whack-a-mole." In bingo, update 2, presenting new evidence, and at the 3rd hearing, I came armed. I printed the journal editor's email. I had screenshots of the cheat sites. I had my DMCA takedown request. And I explained, my work was scraped without my knowledge. These sites profit off student content. I had nothing to do with it. The librarian nodded. She actually looked sympathetic. The faculty representative looked irritated. He said, "But you still reused your own prior work without citation. That is still a violation of our policy." And at that moment I realized I was fighting 2 battles and 1, proving I didn't plagiarize someone else, and 2, defending myself against self-plagiarism. And I admitted, yes, I reused my own work, but I updated and expanded it. I should have cited myself, and I didn't know that counted. That was ignorance, not malice. The committee went into private session. When they called me back, the verdict was complicated. They cleared me of plagiarizing others. They accepted that my work was scraped without my consent, but they still found me guilty of minor self-plagiarism. The sanction, a reduced grade on the assignment, a written warning in my file, and mandatory academic integrity training. And I felt both relief and humiliation. When I told my parents, my mom freaked out. She thought I was 1 step away from expulsion. My dad, who works in IT, was more curious about the scraping. He said, "That happens all the time. Those sites vacuum up content to look legit." He helped me trace the cheat site's domain. It was registered overseas, hidden behind a privacy shield, basically impossible to fight. He suggested I let it go, but I couldn't. My name felt dirty, like I had been dragged through mud for something I didn't do. During all this, my scholarship renewal was pending. The academic office flagged my file, which meant they couldn't process the scholarship until the case closed. I spent weeks terrified I'd lose my funding and have to drop out. And friends tried to comfort me, but some looked at me differently. One even asked, "So did you actually cheat?" That cut deep. That night, I replayed every hearing in my head. I kept thinking, maybe I should have cited myself. Maybe I should have asked permission. Maybe I deserve this. But then I'd see those cheat sites with ads and premium memberships, making money off my unpaid work, and my anger came back. Update 3. 2 weeks later, I got an email from another student. She had seen my posts on the school forum, where I vaguely mentioned, quote, being flagged for plagiarism. She wrote, "I think the same thing happened to me. My lab report showed up on Study Help Hub under someone else's name. Did your professor believe you?" We compared notes. She had also published her work in that same student journal. Her paper was also scraped. We weren't alone. And I gathered 3 more testimonies, all students whose work had been lifted. We went back to the integrity office, this as a group. We presented evidence that the scraping was systemic. The librarian confirmed she had heard similar complaints. Suddenly, the tone shifted. The faculty representative was less smug. The professor apologized for how stressful this had been. They even discussed revising the policy to account for scraped work. I didn't get my grade back to an A, but they expunged the warning from my record. My scholarship was safe. Update 4. When the committee finally cleared my record, I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt restless, because even though I was safe, the system that nearly ruined me was still in place. So I wrote a letter, not a whiny poor me letter, a structured, evidence-heavy document. It included an A timeline of my case, and screenshots of the scraped content, and testimonies from the 3 other students. The journal editor's email admitting their archive had been scraped, the list of proposed policy changes, and I titled it, Recommendations for Handling Scraped Content and Self-Reuse in Academic Work. And I sent it to the Academic Senate, the Dean, and the Integrity Office. My hands shook reading it. I was a junior undergrad, and suddenly I was about to speak to 20 professors and administrators. When I walked in, the room smelled of coffee and nerves. The chair asked me to summarize my case, and I explained. Students are being accused of plagiarism for work that was stolen from them. Bots and cheat sites are scraping our journals and class forums. The integrity system is not equipped to handle that. Students should not carry the burden of proving they didn't post their own work. And I laid out 3 proposals, and 1. Create an official protocol for when scraped work is detected. 2. Allow self-citation as valid practice, even in undergraduate work. And 3. Train faculty to distinguish between plagiarism and unauthorized duplication by third parties. At first, some professors looked skeptical. One asked, "But how can we know students are not uploading their own work?" And I said, "We may never have absolute proof, but we can look at patterns. We can ask, does the student have earlier drafts? Do timestamps align? Did multiple cases emerge from the same source? We can assume good faith unless evidence says otherwise." The librarian backed me up. She said, "Scraping is rampant. If we don't update our policies, more innocent students will be punished." By the end, the chair thanked me. He said my testimony was courageous and constructive. Update 5. 3 months later, the university issued new guidelines. They officially recognized the problem of scraped content. They encouraged faculty to consider alternative evidence before accusing students. They also clarified that self-reuse was not misconduct if acknowledged. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. The journal editor wrote me again. "Thanks to you, our archive now has digital watermarks to deter scraping. Not foolproof, but a start." And even the professor who flagged me originally stopped me in the hallway. She said, "I'm sorry for how this went. You've turned something awful into something better for others." And I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. It took me months to feel normal again. I had panic flashes every time a professor mentioned plagiarism. I saved every draft, every email, like I was building an evidence bunker. But slowly I started to let go, and I realized I had survived something heavy. I had been falsely accused, humiliated, doubted, and I had stood up for myself, documented, persisted. That mattered. When people talk about academic integrity, they imagine cheaters and villains. They don't think about students caught in the gears of a flawed system. And I learned that integrity is not just about not cheating. It's also about speaking the truth when the system calls you a liar. It's about demanding fairness when fairness is inconvenient. Yes, I reused my own work without citation. I own that mistake. But I never stole. I never cheated. And my biggest lesson, documentation saves you. Emails, drafts, receipts. Keep them all. Because when the world doubts you, evidence is the loudest voice you have.